What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS early look stream. NBA DFS stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I, of course, am from the WiseTake Nation, which you can find on all social media platforms listed above. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe. We are a premium DFS content provider as well as a DFS community designed to help make you a better DFS player. Hit the notifications bell so you're notified whenever we do go live. We do all kinds of free content on this channel. For NBA, we cover Monday through Friday. We get the early look. And then, of course, we do our flagship show, which is the NBA Wise stream. It takes place 2 hours prior to lock, leading you up to lock. So make sure you check back and catch us at 5 p.m. Eastern later today as we break down tonight's slate after we get some more information and do some more research and all the fun stuff. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Hit the notifications bell. And if you guys could like the video, man, yesterday on the Wise stream, you guys were awesome with the likes. We had like 97 likes by the time we were done, which was it was really cool, man. We that's what it's all about. Trying to put some content out there. And when you guys hit the like button, it helps us. So we appreciate it, man. We're trying to get the nation to where it needs to be in the DFS community in general. So the DFS industry, I guess. Sorry for the late start. I had some stuff I had to take care of this morning, some family stuff, but we are good to go. We are ready to rock for this one. And it's an interesting slate. It's an 8-game slate that has the feel of like a 15-game slate because there's just so much going on. There's so many teams that are thin. There's new players on teams that we have to hear if they're ready to play. If so, we kind of have to guess how much they're going to play. On top of all that, we got Harden with no Westbrook against the Suns. And no Capella, obviously. They traded him away. And we do have a lot of value. It's just going to be a matter of waiting. Number one, which value you like the most. And number two, how many of these value players do you actually need? Because at a certain point, you still got players in the mid-tier who are in really good positions. We got team like situations where some teams lost key players, like Detroit losing Andre Drummond and replacing him with like John Henson and Brandon Knight, who hasn't played anyway because he's been injured. So there's a lot. There's that's just one example. So again, it's even as far as options go, just looking at the pricing on DraftKings, we're going to start off with the Memphis-Philly game. When we get to Philly, you'll see. We thought they were cheap yesterday. They are extremely cheap today, and we're waiting on news there too. They just acquired Glenn Robinson and Alec Burks, so we have to see how that plays into things. So a lot of questions. I would imagine that tonight's breakdown at 5 is going to be a little different from what we have now, but we'll see. We gave it our best shot, pulled up the minutes and went through and tried to see what we figured out. So hit the like button if you haven't already, and we will get into this with the first game, which is the Memphis Grizzlies and the Philadelphia 76ers. 223 total. It's actually risen 1 point. The Sixers are -5.5 at home. They are on the back end of a back-to-back. Let me see if Jae Irv did the schedule notes for us yet. Let me check. Jae Irv can be a busy man sometimes. Let me see if he did it. Usually pretty good with it. Of course he did it because he's the fucking man. That's why. Schedule notes article I would drop in the YouTube chat. What up, Charles? What up, Tejas? I don't know how do I pronounce your name, bro? I've been seeing you in here. I want to say your name right. Desai? Tell me how to pronounce it, bro. You're in here every day, man. Showing support. I appreciate you. What's up, Charles? Put in the links in the chat for the schedule notes. It's a free article that our boy Jae Irv writes pretty much every day, and as long as there's nothing else in his life he has to get done that day. That's more important. But he goes through and he kind of tells you what teams are looking like rest-wise. So, for instance, Memphis is working with a day off. Philly is on the back end of a back-to-back. So just little things like that. Obviously not a big mismatch, but you'll see some other ones like Dallas and Washington. Washington's working with 3 days rest. So some of these things are important to know when you're projecting minutes and when you're taking into account your exposures of how much of a stance you want to take on a player, how much risk is involved, things like that. So check it out. I do recommend it. It's free. So go check it out. All right, so looking at Memphis, the road team, they lost Jae Crowder. We know that. He didn't play in the last game either, so we kind of have an idea, I think, of what happened. Matter of fact, let's popcorn machine it real quick. Let's see right here. Let's look for Memphis. I was looking at this earlier when I was doing the initial minute projections. So yeah, Jae Crowder was out. So Kyle Anderson started. He finished with 26 minutes. The most interesting piece of all this, and I'm sorry, you guys probably can't see all of it, but the most interesting piece is that DeAnthony Melton, who did come off the bench, he closed in that game. He stayed in for the last couple minutes of garbage time, but he was actually in. He actually closed. He closed over Kyle Anderson. Looks like it was him, Joval, and then Joval came out for Clark. Dylan Brooks, John Morant, and Jaren Jackson are what I would say considered the true closers in that game. So it doesn't mean they're going to do that again. They have other guys. They could have rolled with Josh Jackson in that scenario. They could have given it to Kyle Anderson. But DeAnthony Melton is the one. Number one, he's one of their younger players, so I think they could afford to give him the time. And number two, he's got a lot of upside, actually. He went for, I think it was 30-something DraftKings points. Let me double check that real quick. 31.75 DraftKings points in 28 minutes, had a 24.9% usage rate. And the usage rate is usually somewhere in the upper teens to mid-20s anyway. So with Crowder gone, maybe this is a way for him to get more minutes. Again, they can play Josh Jackson more. It's not like there are ways around it. Dylan Brooks' price came down. I think that his role is a little bit more solidified. You can see his projections pretty well. It's a lot of yellow because of how well DeAnthony Melton projects. All I did was project him. I think we have 26 and a half minutes currently for Melton. Maybe that's too aggressive. Maybe we lower him to 26, but even if I'll do it right now and show you guys, it's not going to make that much of a difference. He's still going to project to be one of the top plays on the slate. Because this is a guy that was getting like 18 to 22 and was still doing a lot with it. I know the most recent time we seen him, he didn't do a ton. He was dealing with some sort of injury. But anyway, Jonas Valanciunas, if Embiid plays, which as of right now, I mean, we're assuming he is. I'm just saying it is a back-to-back. He's dealing with an injury. And if you watch Embiid on the court, he don't look too great. Anyway, assuming that he is in, I would think they would like to play Joval. Joval's questionable right now with an injury. If he's out, we'll obviously load up on Brandon Clark. But it's not as easy. I would love Brandon Clark if I thought he was going to get 28 to 30 minutes. But it's not, on a slate like today, it's not as simple as that because there are so many moving parts on the rest of the slate. So, as you'll see when we get into it. John Morant's price has come down. He's just not been as aggressive and just hasn't been as good. Ben Simmons and Philly, a little better defensively. We'll have to see how that matches up. But his price is really low. Again, the other issue is that we have other guys who are also really cheap. So I think the Anthony Melton is a guy as of right now I'm ending up with a lot of. So we got to make a decision on him. He's 3,700 on DraftKings. And even on FanDuel at 480, if he's going to get 26 minutes, he still projects really well. We have our eye on the Jonas Valanciunas situation. Which he's not a bad option either at center for tournaments if he is in. Because again, if he does play, and assuming Embiid does play, they're going to prefer him on the court, I would think, against Embiid. Milwaukee was just letting Embiid take threes all day yesterday. Embiid couldn't shoot. The injury Embiid has is not on his shooting hand, but he's having I don't know if he's out of shape. He just doesn't look that great. But the usage is still there. But regardless, that could keep Joe Vizzi, could also get him in foul trouble. There's a lot to consider. Jaren Jackson Jr. should see some Al Horford if Embiid's in. Al Horford, a pretty good defender. Not super aggressive on the offensive end, so purposes of foul trouble, you're not that worried. But obviously matchups can change. Horford could get slid down to the 5, and if Tobias ends up playing the 4, that could be an issue for a guy like him, just for the purposes of foul trouble. But Dylan Brooks, we have to keep an eye on Kyle Anderson because he is going to start, and he could just close this game if they decide to use him for defensive purposes, which would kill the Anthony Melton shares. But Melton, as of right now, projects to be the best. He projects to be one of the top plays on the slate for us as of now. But again, we have a 26-minute projection, which could be aggressive for a guy that's averaging anywhere from 18 to 21. So a lot of things to keep an eye on. We'll come back and visit Memphis. Philly, not exactly the fastest-paced team. On the other side, we got the Philadelphia 76ers. They continue to just be underpriced on DraftKings. Ben Simmons kind of got there relative to the other people around him, what their scores were, but really wanted another point or two to make him pop. Tobias Harris played like 38 minutes. He did really well. His price is, I think, even lower today. We did lower the minutes of everybody just a little bit. Not so much for the back-to-back aspect, more so because we're not sure what they're going to do with Alec Burks and Robinson. And even though the minutes may not affect these guys, like say their minutes may stay the same, the usage could change because these are players like Len Robinson obviously will shoot. Alec Burks can do a little bit more. He can distribute. So Ben Simmons, who I think is like 4th in the league in minutes played, Alec Burks could certainly relieve him and get him some time off the court if that's something they wanted to do. So we'll have to keep an eye on the situation. They are getting paced up. Memphis has been pretty fast. So I still think that these guys look good. If Embiid were to play 8,500 on DraftKings, he looked terrible yesterday. If you watched him play yesterday, you probably wouldn't give a damn that he's 8,500. But just in terms of process following projections, we gave him a fairly conservative minute projection for a close game, and he still projects pretty well. So something to keep an eye on. But Tobias, Ben Simmons, Embiid, those are the main catalysts. Now, should Embiid get ruled out? And that's a speculation. I'm not trying to put ideas in your head. Just keep an eye on these kind of things so you're not caught off guard. Just for the fact that he's dealing with injury, doesn't look very good. And Philly's been losing. They can't win on the road. They are home. They're one of the better home teams. They just can't seem to win on the road. So Philly definitely underpriced in a pretty good matchup, despite the back-to-back. Next up, we got Dallas and Washington. Shit. I have a new friend request on Facebook, guys. Shit. All right, so the Dallas situation. We're waiting on big news here, too. Kristaps Porzingis is currently expensive as shit and also questionable. They're playing Washington, which is a phenomenal pace-up spot. In terms of schedule, Dallas is on one day off, but they do have a game tomorrow. Keep that in mind. Just more reason for Porzingis to maybe take it easy today with he got a broken nose, if you don't know. Washington's had 3 days off, and they're a little bit of a different team. We'll talk about it. As far as Vegas goes, we got a 234 total, which is tied. There are 3 games with a 234 total, and those are the highest ones. Man. Dallas is a 2.5 point favorite on the road. Opened up at 3, down to 2.5. So we'll see. So as of right now in the projections, we have Porzingis in. So it's not like a crazy overreaction. There's guys that look pretty decent. Guys like Tim Hardaway. Guys that are close, like Jalen Brunson. But if Porzingis gets ruled out, we'll probably want to load up here on a lot of these guys. Maxi Kleber, we would assume, would start against a team that's terrible against bigs. If Willie Cauley-Stein were to start, I think he started the last time Porzingis was out. Kleber started at the 4. If that would be the scenario, we'd have to strongly consider him at 3,300 on DraftKings, 37 on FanDuel, just because of the spot. Now, I understand he's not playing a ton, but if Porzingis is out, that's a lot of minutes that they'd have to absorb. So you would think that would lead to him playing more minutes. Jalen Brunson, his usage goes up tremendously with Porzingis off the court. He's a 40 waiting to happen. So if Porzingis gets ruled out, we're going to come back to this Dallas team and be very, very interested. In the meantime, Porzingis is expensive, but the matchup is really good. I think at his price, I was underweight on him last time, which obviously sucked because he went for 50, and he broke his nose. If he came back in the game, I would forget about it. He would have gone for 60 or something like that. But I don't know if he came back in the game fully. I don't know if he ever came back in or not. They said he did. I got an alert that he did, but I never actually saw his stats change, and I don't think his minutes changed much, so I'm assuming he didn't. But if he does play, if he does play, he might be playing with a mask. He did break his nose. Got to wonder how that's going to affect him. A guy again that shoots. But as far as pace goes, rebounding, all that kind of stuff is a great opportunity. But I'm hoping that we get Porzingis out, and then we could load up on Tim Hardaway Jr., Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson would be my favorite, and then of course Maxi Kleber, because the matchup is really good for everyone. It's just we'll have to check the status on Seth Curry as well. He's missed a couple games, so we'll see if he's back. But with him out, Hardaway's been playing extra minutes. So if Porzingis comes out, we'll come back in here, bump up these projections. Dorian Finney-Smith, believe it or not, is one of the bigger usage increasers with Porzingis off the court. And Luka, of course. We know Luka's out. So something to keep an eye on. I know it's hard to pay $6K for that guy, especially when you see some of the other players that are $6K. But he did go for 40 against Atlanta, I think, when Porzingis was out. I think it was Atlanta. And the numbers do show that he actually gets a usage increase with Porzingis off the court. So Dallas will be a team we'll come back to. We're going to be interested in a lot of things there, I think, especially if Porzingis gets ruled out. On the Washington side, so they lost Jordan McRae permanently. They traded him. They lost IT2. They don't have him anymore. Thomas Bryant, we know, is out because that foot, I guess, has been aggravating him. Shabazz Napier supposedly is doubtful to make his debut. That could change, so keep an eye on that. That's just, as of now, from what I've gathered, people don't seem to think he's going to play today. But keep an eye on that. So with that said, we expect Troy Brown. We've seen when McRae's been out in the past. Troy Brown has had a bigger role in the second unit. His minutes have been down, but I think now maybe he gets a little bit more. Looking at the center situation, Rui Hachimura is back. He played like 26 minutes. I would assume they would raise him to around 28 or so. Davis Bertans also on that second unit gets a boost. Ian Mahinmi should start again. He actually projects to be a pretty good value play today when you consider that Mo Wagner is back but is on a minutes limit. I don't see him playing more than 19 today. So they could play Bertans there, but again, Hachimura is not fully 35-minute ready to go, so they may need Bertans to work in there. So long story short, it may lead to Ian Mahinmi actually playing a good amount today, especially when you consider that it's against Dallas. Even if Porzingis is out, they do have big players between Maxi Kleber, Willie Cauley-Stein. They got Boban. Doubt that would be a thing, but they could if they want to. So somebody to keep in mind. Bradley Beal, we expect him to play 40 minutes with big usage. I'm good with him, but today's obviously the James Harden deal, so you're gonna have to make that decision. The first thing you got to decide before who you're gonna pivot to and spend your money on is, do you want James Harden or not? Because there is a lot of value today. So if you want to sacrifice one value player to sacrifice Harden, you can probably get another one of these mid-range expensive dudes. Not necessarily Beal. 10-1, 10-3 is pretty expensive. Ish Smith, that's the guy here, I think. He's assuming that Shabazz is not available. He's the only point guard really left on the team. I'm sure we'll see Beal play some point guard, which is good for him. But I would expect Ish to play at least 30 minutes. We have him projected for 31, which I think would be conservative in this scenario. But we have seen, like, even with IT2 was playing like 18. Ish would get like 26, and the rest they would just make it happen with Beal. So I do like Ish, though. 4,700 seems like a strong value option for a guy that should get 30 minutes or more, because he's really the only point guard left on the team at the moment if Shabazz is not available. So we'll revisit it. Hopefully we get some more news by then. But Washington, it looks like a pretty good game stack to me. But there's a few games, so let's keep it rolling. We don't want to get married to one just yet. It's early. Got to take our time. Atlanta against Boston. Check out the schedule with notes real quick. So Atlanta's had a day off. Boston's had a day off. Pretty even schedule-wise. Let's look at spread. 234 total. This is another game tied with that 234 max total. Boston is a 9.5-point favorite at home, up from 9 probably I think Marcus Smart is probable to play. Kemba's questionable. He may return. Starting with the Atlanta side, they made some moves. Clint Capella's been hurt, so I doubt he plays today. We know Bembry's going to be out again. They got Scal, but he's also been hurt. Cam Reddish was doubtful with his concussion deal. Bruno, I think, was already ruled out or doubtful, something like that. So looking at what they have left, they do have Dedmon now. That's a new piece they have, and they've been looking to get a center. They brought him back. So he may actually play a good amount at center today. The only thing is Boston is not that big. They're missing Theis, whatever you want to call him. They do have Cantor, who we'll talk about in a second, but Cantor, could end up only playing 22, 23, 24 minutes if both teams decide to go smaller. With that said, I expect John Collins to continue to play big minutes. Pretty good matchup. The projection's not great on DraftKings because his price has gotten up, but on FanDuel it looks pretty good. And it is a good spot. You don't want to ignore him. Kevin Huerter's been playing big minutes, man. So where he's cheap, I think it's fine. He's played Boston twice this year and gone for at least 30 fantasy points in both. That would do you pretty well. On DraftKings, you want a little bit more, but on FanDuel, if he hits that, that's really all you're looking for. Trae Young plays huge minutes. He played really well against Minnesota. That was a great spot. With Marcus Smart back, it's not as good. If Kemba could be back, which not that I think Kemba's some elite defender, but I think that, I think he could keep up a little better, right? So I'm okay with Trae Young, but again, similar to the Bradley Beal conversation, it depends on how much you want to play Harden, if at all, which we'll get to. But Dedmon we have at 23, just assuming they're not going to throw him out there for 30 right out the gate. They could, but just kind of under that assumption. DeAndre Hunter's been playing well. He's cheap. You can see how bad he's been throughout the course of the season, that even with 30 minutes, he's still not projecting well for a 4.3 or 4.1 price tag. But he has actually been playing well lately, so this doesn't really reflect that. Maybe we'll give him a couple more minutes to reflect. Although he's questionable, he was playing with a sore ankle, and apparently after those games, his ankle was bothering him a little bit. So we'll have to see, but I would assume he's going to play. On the Boston side, Cantor's popping off the charts. He's 4.4, 4.6. He's such a high point per minute average player, and he's in a nut matchup against Atlanta in a pace-up spot, a team that Dedmon's not. They were one of the reasons they were terrible against centers to begin with is because they had Dedmon years ago. So that's not going to change much. So Cantor, the question is, how many minutes does he play? I'm trying to be conservative because they very well can go small, especially if Kemba comes back. That's a team where like they could easily go with Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Hayward and Tatum, and just go small ball. So even though Kanter's projecting well, we have to really consider this and see what we can find to find out how many minutes we realistically thinks he's going to play. Because if he is going to play 22 or more, then there's a good chance he is going to do well at these prices. But if for whatever reason it's just not, we don't think it's going to work out, both teams are going to go smaller, which is a possibility, then obviously we don't want to put too much of him in there or have too high of an expectation at that point. So something we have to consider, but it's a smash spot for Kanter. I'm not saying I like Kanter, but I got to calm myself down because ever since he did the God mode thing to the Sixers when he was on the Knicks on Christmas Day a couple years ago, I've been just perplexed and I've been just waiting for another opportunity to get God mode. But I don't know if this is it. It may be because Theus is out. So if there was a time, it's going to be while Theus is out and they don't have no centers. But again, they could technically go small. Boston's one of those teams that are a little more confident doing that. So we'll see. Don't get too excited. I got it right. Tejas, no shit. How about that? Look at that. Tejas, there we go. Holla. Okay, there you go. Not bad, bro. Not bad. Appreciate the support. If you guys have hit the like button, thanks for joining us. Hit that like button, and we will keep it rolling. What we got here? We got the Toronto Raptors and the Pacers. Man, it's windy as shit around here. We have a 218 total, down from 219. Toronto opened up as 1-point underdogs. They're now 1-point favorites. As far as schedule goes, these teams just played each other. So they both had a day off. They just played each other a couple days ago. And they're both on the front end of a back-to-back. So that game was competitive. We talked about that on this show 2 days ago, and we had mentioned that like there was like a stars and scrubs chalky slate, and we had mentioned that the balanced build here is this. It was the Minnesota slate, or they were all chalk. And we had talked about this team, like both of these teams being balanced, and nobody was going to play them, and that was exactly the case. I didn't play enough of them. I think on the show that day I said I was going to play like 20% Larry. Ended up with like 10 because I had way too much Culver and all that other bullshit. But we did talk about it, so it's something that we saw and we knew it was a possibility. Maybe the question is, do you chase that again today, or do you just say, no, that's just the way things played out, and today's going to be a different script, or today's just a different slate altogether? Because again, like nobody's going to play this game. The total is not nearly high enough for people to get excited relative to considering there's 3 games with 234 totals. The pace isn't anything crazy. The only thing you have is that these are 2 teams that are both look at each other as playoff contenders. So there's always that playoff atmosphere aspect, and of course some injuries on Toronto. Speaking of Toronto, Serge Ibaka did really well. Went for like 40-something DraftKings points. He was 6-1. His price didn't really move. On FanDuel, it went up a little bit. He was even cheaper on FanDuel. But, I mean, he's in a good spot. You know that with Sabonis and Turner on the other side, they're going to have to be as big as they can. And Ibaka's the only true center they have. I mean, they have, what's his name? Boucher, who didn't play much last time at all. Played like 8 minutes. But Ibaka did get the minutes, and he did well. Terrence Davis is really cheap. He's getting really cheap on DraftKings. He's 3,700. He's played 28 minutes and he's played bigger minutes. 28 minutes and 21 minutes, I think. Oh no, I'm sorry, 28 and 27 or something like that over his last couple games. So it's definitely an interesting value play today at 3.7. And I don't know how popular he's going to be. I mean, I would assume we only have him at 23 and a half minutes, and this is what he's projecting for. On FanDuel, it's not as exciting, obviously. On DraftKings at 3.7, though, he's going for 6.2x right now at the moment. So pricing is everything. So it's interesting. Like I said, he got 28 minutes in this matchup. The game before it, that was a close game. The game before, he got 28, but that was a blowout. So I think initially everybody was kind of like, oh, it was a blowout. But then he got it again. And is that a matchup thing? Because they have the same matchup today. So interesting to keep an eye on. With him, Van Fleet hasn't done it that well, but his price has gotten really low. He's probably my favorite, just based off price. From the main guys, Siakam did well. His price has gone up on FanDuel, went down on DraftKings for some reason, even though he smashed. Obviously, him and Ibaka was the matchup they wanted the most against Turner and Sabonis. Lowry's minutes were up, but his price is raised a little bit. He's fine, just nothing crazy, not as exciting. He was like 6.7 that day. The rest of it, I'm just not that interested in. So, I mean, it's a similar situation if you want to chase. Terrence Davis is interesting. Ibaka, I think, is a fine play. And I like Van Fleet, man. This is a guy that plays big minutes. He can go for 40. I know he hasn't played that well lately, but we know he's capable. And he may be the most overlooked because of how bad he's been recently. On the Pacers side, TJ Warren's questionable. I think the team said that they're expecting him to be back or hoping he'll be back. He had a concussion, so there's like he passed 2 tests. Now there's 2 more tests he's got to pass or something. If he's in, that's going to change things, the dynamic a little bit of this team, right? I would assume that Oladipo may go back to the bench. The usage for guys like Brogdon, drop a tad. Brogdon, another one we talked about who went off, and now he's cheap again. They're daring you to play him again. It's a tough spot here. I mean, you know where to go if you want to come here, right? You're going to force in Sabonis, even though he's probably too expensive, at least on DraftKings. You're going to play Brogdon. You're going to, if TJ Warren's in, you can consider him. TJ Warren is very cheap, I will say that. If he does play, he's 5K, he's really cheap. It's just not it's a big slate, not as exciting, but the ownership's going to reflect that as well. We're not the only ones who are not getting excited about this game. And let's go to Detroit versus Oklahoma City. So Detroit, man, this is a fun one, right? Let's see here. Detroit's had a day off. They're in a 4-6, and they're in the front end of a back-to-back. So they're on that Denver game plan where they're just going to play a ton of games in a small stretch. And they're missing some people too. Man, I'm gonna have to adjust this. We got some new players in here. It looks like no borders for this guy. He's out anyway. It's not a big deal. But anyway, Oklahoma City working with a day off. That's it. 216 total, down from 217. Oklahoma City opened up -13, down to -12.5. Maybe I guess people saw value somehow. I don't know. Let's start with Detroit. So Reggie Jackson has played really well. I had 100% of him the other night. That was awesome. Night didn't go as well as I would have hoped because of Culver, but it didn't go as bad either because of him, so I'm grateful. His price is elevated. 5.7 on FanDuel, 6.1 on DraftKings. The usage for Reggie Jackson has looked awesome. We got to remember how thin Detroit is right now. They're missing a lot of people. No Svi, no Markieff Morris. Brandon Knight hasn't been playing. No Blake Griffin, no Luke Kennard, no Derrick Rose. These are guys that are a part of the rotation. They waived Tim Frazier. That's just the situation that they're in. Let me see if I got any Reggie. All right, here we go. So Reggie played 34 minutes against Phoenix. It's the second time he's played 34 minutes. His usage rate was 34. 10 for 24 from the field. He took 24 shots. Now, he made 10 of those. We know how bad that could be. We've seen the ones, 1 for 16s, the 1 for 12s. 5 for 9 from 3, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, and he had Drummond playing that game. OKC, a little bit of a better defensive team. His price is elevated, but the usage is going to remain. Bruce Brown should play a ton of minutes also. I know he didn't do... I never get excited to play him when he's up here. I like to play him when he's in the 3s or at least the very low 4s. But again, I mean, with Drummond gone, everybody's sliding down. You just think he's going to play a ton of minutes today. He got 33 against Phoenix, and that was with Drummond on the court. I know it's not his position just in terms of bodies, though. He still got 33 after playing 38 and 38 the 2 games prior. Langston Galloway is really cheap, and he's actually played well. He's gotten minutes. Very scoring dependent, which always makes me nervous, but he is cheap. Sekou Doumbouya can play more today. He could be an interesting value play because when he has been on the court, even though he hasn't been all that efficient, his usage rates have looked all right. In this last game, he played 16 minutes against Phoenix. He looked kind of lost. He had 3 fouls in those 16 minutes. Against Memphis, he had a 26% usage rate. 28% usage rate across 26. 18 across 35 the game before. So without Drummond, again, there's a lot of usage going around. I wouldn't be surprised if he picks him up. And they may, I don't know what they're going to do with Thon Maker and John Henson. I mean, I would assume they're going to play him, but Christian Wood may even play sometime at the 5, maybe. And if that would be the case, then maybe Sekou gets to play more at the 4. So we'll see. He could be an interesting value play. I mean, we were a little aggressive with his minutes for the time being, but you could see you got to give the minutes to somebody. They just don't have a lot of players right now. John Henson, we know, just arrived. John Henson just played these guys 2 days ago when he was on Cleveland, and he went for 31 against them. Kind of interesting. He played 31 minutes because I think Thompson was out, and for whatever reason, they didn't want to play Nance that day. But, yeah, I mean, hard to argue against. You just saw them 2 days ago. The only thing, we don't know how many minutes he's going to get today. Maybe they want to play Thon Maker more. I don't know. Christian Wood's the other guy worth talking about. He's 6'1". His price has been elevated, but obviously with Drummond off, his role should be largely increased on the offense. Whether he starts, comes off the bench, it doesn't really matter. I just no Markieff. Like who is a guy here that's super aggressive enough to say no? It's just really Reggie and Wood. That's as far as guys that are really aggressive. So I'm fine with it in the mid tier. Christian Wood. And again, you expect him to take some higher percentage shots closer to the basket. He actually projects really well for us. Reggie does too, but Wood looks like the stronger option. On the Oklahoma City side, we've got Adams did play 30 minutes in his last game with now he's got Henson and these guys. I mean, I don't know if he did that well against Henson. See if I could find him a little bit here. Yeah, he played 30 minutes against Henson, and the usage was low. It was just good to see him play 30 minutes again because he hasn't since he hurt his ankle. They had some time off before that, so I guess he was good to go. We give him 28, and he projects well, but a lot of guys do. Danilo Gallinari is still with the OKC Thunder after speculation he was going to go to Miami. He's actually really cheap. I actually don't mind him at all. Shai Gilgeous and Paul and Schroeder, they're all good tournament options. They're all priced up a little bit. Schroeder's been balling. Chris Paul got into foul trouble the last game, so his minutes were down a little bit. That led to Schroeder playing a couple more, and he was just playing better. So, I mean, there's nothing special. They're all going to be low-owned, I think, because we have so many spots that are demanding attention, and there's just really nothing here that's demanding you to look at it. Even with 6 Adams projecting for 6X, we just have other plays. Ooh, on FanDuel, he's the devil. Adams is the devil on FanDuel. Look at that. Holla. With that 6.66X. That's the sell your soul to the devil, win 100K today. That's what that is. All right, Rockets and Suns. Another marquee game tonight. This is the other game with the third game with the 234 total. Oh boy. So for the Suns, it's Houston's the road. Yeah, Houston's the road team. So for Houston, it's the back end of a back-to-back. Also 4-6. For Phoenix, they've had a day off, but they are still in a 4-6 stretch, and they have a game tomorrow. So, not exactly the greatest stretch for Phoenix either. Starting with the Houston side, we've got a 234 total. Houston are 2-point favorites on the road. They just beat the Lakers last night. They're 2-point favorites against Phoenix. It's funny how that works, right? No Westbrook. So Westbrook, we are expecting to be out, obviously. And a couple things that are interesting. Eric Gordon looked really good yesterday. He's obviously pretty scoring dependent when Harden's on the court, but we expect him to play a bigger role when Harden's off the court. So on FanDuel, looks like a lock again. Looks like a really good place to start. On DraftKings, we got to do a little more to get him popping a little bit more for us there. Obviously, his usage is going to go up. Not as high as it was when Harden and Westbrook were out, but we expect his usage to go up just from Westbrook being out. Robert Covington was impressive. He ended up getting 30 minutes off the bench. And being that they're so small, I mean, the dude is playing real close to the basket, and they're relying on him for boards. So he played 30 minutes in his first game with the Rockets, 17.6% usage rate. He took 9 shots, took 7 threes, made 4 of them, had 8 rebounds, 4 assists. So he was pretty active, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Now, foul trouble is certainly a thing. I figure he's going to be covering probably a lot of Kelly Oubre when he's on the court, just because Kelly Oubre don't leave the court, so it doesn't matter if he comes off the bench or not. He's going to see a lot of Kelly Oubre. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I like Covington. Obviously, Harden, we had to exaggerate his minutes to reflect his usage. Probably still too low. I'll probably raise him more. That's going to be the first decision you have to make today is are you going to try to make Harden work? And right now, I don't see why you wouldn't. He's playing Phoenix in what's projected to be a close game. But I guess what it comes down to is grading out the other studs. We've came across Trae Young. We've come across a couple people. And what it comes down to is grading those people against Harden in his spot. And it's really hard to compete in this situation with Harden. 2 days ago or 3 days ago, whatever it was, he was in the situation against Charlotte. I went underweight. I think I faded him completely. And that was obviously a disaster. That was not good. So, just be mindful of what you're doing. Doesn't mean that maybe today that strategy would work. But you have to make your own determination. It's tough. Phoenix does not play good defense. Now, that could work both ways. Maybe that his teammates are doing more of the scoring so he doesn't have to, or obviously it works in the way that he's getting an assist for every one of those and still making his shots. So stuff to consider, but I do like Covington for his role. Not really interested in PJ Tucker, just not into guys that stand around. Austin Rivers, we'll see what happens to his role, but his price is up a little bit more. We prefer him when he's like min price 3.6, all that. But he could play a lot of point guard today. And then Danuel House, he still played, man. He got 28 minutes. So Covington, I think, is going to have an effect on him at some points because they like to go guard heavy. But with Westbrook out, that should open things back up for him because maybe they're not trying to go. I don't see them wanting Rivers, Gordon, and Harden constantly on the court, right? You figure it's like Harden, Gordon, Harden, Rivers, Rivers, Gordon. And then from there, they could play a Covington and a whatever. But we'll see. They're comfortable with this 3-guard format kind of thing, and they can continue to do that. Either way, I like Covington, I like Eric Gordon, and I like James Harden. So the Suns are going to be paced up. Houston is going to be the fastest. Like they're going to break records with their speed. With no bigs, that's what they have to do. They're going to have to run. So all these guys are just going to be paced up dramatically. Ricky Rubio has been terrible, but he did play 34 minutes in his last game, and he's really cheap. Trying to be conservative with his minutes. Maybe we'll lower it a little bit more because I don't want it to give us a ton of Rubio. But at the end of the day, maybe he's dealing with an injury, but you're waiting. He was going for 40s, no problem earlier, and he's done that throughout his whole career. So you're waiting for that to come around, and you want to be ahead. And a competitive game against the Rockets in a pace-up spot where his team is in a 4-6 stretch and has a game tomorrow, maybe this is it. I don't know. Mikal Bridges playing big minutes. Obviously, massive minutes. He's obviously played well lately, but he's got a very low floor. Kelly Oubre will have his hands full with Covington and some of these guys, but Kelly Oubre's going to play a ton. Kelly Oubre's probably too cheap. If you want to game stack this game, Phoenix is just as friendly to stack. DeAndre Ayton, they got no bigs. Kaminsky, Baines, Saric, all out. They got no bigs. It's Diallo and Ayton, and Ayton is playing a ton of minutes. So if you think Ayton's going to play that role where he just shoots over the top of everybody, we saw AD, they couldn't stop him last night. If you think Ayton's going to do that, they're going to keep Ayton on the court constantly, and they're going to pound him in. So we exaggerated. It's not even exaggerating his minutes. He's playing big minutes right now. You don't see big men like him playing that many minutes, and he is. If you think he's going to fail, or if you think they try to go smaller, then I guess Check Diallo would be a value play for you. Devin Booker, obviously underpriced, projecting to be one of the top options on the slate to spend money on. So this is like the game stack is just looking like a pretty solid real thing as of now. I'm getting a lot of Devin Booker, but we got some other interesting things to get to, and we have more news to come. One of the marquee games, though, right? James Harden. To Harden or not? Next up, we got Miami against Sacramento. We've got... What we at here? Look at the schedule and notes. Miami's had a day off. Sacramento's had 3 days off, but they are on the front end of a back-to-back, so they play tomorrow, but they've had 3 days off. Interesting. Miami, 219.5 total for the game. Miami is a 1-point underdog. They opened up as a 1.5-point favorite. So Miami actually finds themselves in a situation where they could be pretty thin today. So Jimmy Butler is doubtful, so I took his minutes out. He hurt his shoulder fouling somebody. It was like a stupid foul. He reached his arm back and hurt his shoulder, which was devastating to me because I had a lot of Jimmy Butler that day. Luckily, I had a lot of Derrick Jones Jr. too, and he balled out like a motherfucker. So if Butler's out, Dragic and Nunn. Nunn did play 30-plus minutes in the last game, even played some garbage time at the end. So I think he's good to go. Nunn and Dragic, I would assume, are going to take a lot of shots, play a lot. Duncan Robinson with Tyler Hero out still should play a lot, take a lot of shots. Where it gets interesting is where Jae Crowder fits. You got Kelly Olynyk, Derrick Jones Jr., Jae Crowder. Obviously, Bam is playing the 5. Bam is in a phenomenal matchup. And with Butler off the court, Bam saw a significant usage increase as well. So really, it's Nunn, Dragic, and Bam as the main 3 that I like in this situation against a bad defense. And not to mention, Sacramento has so they got rid of Dedmon. So Rashawn Holmes, who I don't even think is going to play, we'll talk about that in a second, who may not play, I should say, is the only real center they got. They got Giles, who they won't play more than 17 minutes, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But so Nunn, Dragic, Bam, I like a lot. After that, it gets dicey. Derrick Jones Jr.'s price is up. He was really efficient in that last game. I mean, he was like 10 for 12 from the field, including 3-pointers. So is Crowder going to play over him? Is Crowder going to start? How many minutes they went out and got him for a reason. They were going to get Gallinari. It didn't work out, so they went and got Crowder. Whatever the case is. Or maybe they were trying to do it at the same time. I don't remember. But I think Crowder was the alternative to Gallo. I think. He's 3,900. We just don't know his role right yet. Derrick Jones Jr., like I said, he's got massive upside. If Crowder wasn't here, I'd project him for like 33 or 34 minutes, but Crowder is here, so I'm not sure. Olynyk, we've seen doing this kind of, Myers Leonard role. He's playing the Myers Leonard role. He started against the Clippers, only ended up playing 22 minutes. So, 22 to 24 is probably his range. It's a good spot for him too, matchup wise. So I don't mind him at all at 3,300 on DraftKings. 39 on FanDuel for a center, probably not. But so this is the situation we're gonna want, right? Against the Kings, bad defense, a team that could push the pace, though they haven't been as fast as you would think. And there's no Jimmy Bucket. So, in general, they're going to be thin. They're missing a high-usage player. I definitely want to come back and look at these. I think Nunn and Dragic are definitely two plays that, and Bam, are two plays I want to find a way to get. It's just going to be a matter of how can I get enough teams today. There just seems like you just want more. You just want more. As of right now, I'm getting more Dragic, but on the King side... So I mentioned that right now we have Holmes in because he was questionable, and everything I read the other day made it seem like he was going to return. I read some stuff this morning that made it seem like maybe not. Apparently his shoulder, which he's been out for his shoulder, was sore after practice again. So I would imagine that like with the All-Star break coming up and you needing him for the rest of the season because you got rid of your only center. Bagley will eventually come back. They do have Tolliver. I'm correct. I'm sorry. They did go out there and trade for Alex Len and Jabari Parker. They've just both been hurt. But so maybe they will play. Oh, it looks like DeAndre Hunter available to play. We're starting to get news. Cam Reddish ruled out. So far, everything we predicted is for true. Let's see what else. Is that it? You're just going to tell me about a couple guys I don't really care about? That's how we're doing this? Bruno Fernando available to play. So that's a little different. We thought he was going to be out. Alfonso McKinney getting a multi-year contract with the Cavs. Good for him. Anyway, coming back here. So at some point they'll have some bigs. It's just this game that they're going to be low on bigs. Again, we have Holmes projected in, but I'm starting to think he won't be in. If he is in, he's got a great price. I hate the fact that he's center only on DraftKings. That annoys the shit out of me, but he could face some sort of limitation. I don't know. But if he's out, then obviously we're going to give more minutes to Bjelica. We'll raise Giles' minutes to 17. The only reason I say 17 is because they don't seem to want to play more than that. And we could see Tolliver end up playing more, who's min price on DraftKings and FanDuel and is power forward at both. We could see him just because they have no choice. Either that or they're going to play Bjelica at the 5, in which you could see why I like Bam so much. And even if Holmes plays, Holmes ain't a good defender. He's not, So some things we have to think about. Buddy Hield's price has come down. He's only getting around 30 if you're lucky in close games, but his usage has been phenomenal off the bench. So I'm with his price coming down, I'm interested. De'Aaron Fox, obviously a fine play. Nunn, Dragic, all these guys, like no Butler. Their defense is going to be a little bit worse in general. I do like De'Aaron Fox as a tournament play. 7-8 prices come down a lot on DraftKings. Bogdanovich is fine. That's it. But Bjelica is the one keep an eye. He's been terrible lately, mind you. He's been terrible, but keep an eye on him. He may end up having to play some center today. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but it's something. Last game, guys, we got the Portland Trailblazers against Utah Jazz. What we got here? We've got a 226.5 total. The Jazz are 8.5-point favorites at home. Portland, we know, is on the back end of a back-to-back and a 3-4. Utah's had a day off. So Utah just got embarrassed their last game, right? This is the second time. So in the NBA, I don't know if you guys see me tweet about this, but in the NBA, like there was a coach, I forgot who it was, but the way the schedule works, that there's certain games where coaches have it circled on the calendar and they consider them scheduled losses. That's what they consider them, because the way between the travel and the schedule itself, where they were put, it makes it really difficult to win those games. And then you oftentimes see teams rest certain players on those games because almost forfeiting it. Kind of like when we saw the Rockets do it to Utah. They rested Westbrook, Harden, and Capella. They didn't rest them. They had injuries too. But I'm sure like somebody could have played. They just elected not to, right? This is not to say that the coaches are going to try to lose. They're trying to win. They're going to try their best, but they're kind of expecting a loss. They'll prepare more for the game before or the next game or something like that. Utah has a home field advantage because just like Denver, they have some altitude. It's not as bad as Denver, but they do have some altitude. If you notice, teams often struggle playing in Utah. And they lost at home to the Rockets without those guys. Gave up 70 DraftKings points to Gordon. Then they lost to Denver, who had a 7-man rotation, was on like a 5-7 or some crazy stretch on a back-to-back with travel from Denver to Utah from their altitude to other altitude, and they lost to a 7-man rotation. Missing Barton, missing Grant, missing key players. No Millsap. I mean, Utah should be embarrassed. That's wild. With that said, Portland looked pretty good last night. Damian Lillard's usage looked fine. I think the issue with Dame yesterday was that his teammates were all shooting well. McCollum was shooting really well before he got into foul trouble. Carmelo was shooting really well. Whiteside was just dominant, cleaning up every rebound, had like 20-some rebounds. So it's interesting. This kind of feels like that Denver situation where he's going into a situation that could be tough to play. But his price has really come down, Dame. Let's take a look at him. So his usage was 34.7%. He shot 3 for 9 from 3, so that's probably a bigger difference. Only took 20 shots. He still had the 10 assists, but the usage rate was still dominant. And now his price has come down. That is 2 games in a row where you're disappointed in his outing. So earlier this year, he's played Utah twice during the regular season. In Utah, went for 54, so he did show he could play well there. Shot 7 to 13 from 3, 10 for 21 from the field, 8 assists. Had he gotten 2 more assists, now he's doing really, really well at this price. At home against Utah, he went for 79. It was one of the games where he started the streak. It was February 1st. So I do think he's an interesting low-owned option. I expect him to be cheap because of Harden. And he does make sense like as one of like Trae Young and these other guys, one of the Harden pivots. A guy that can maybe get you that 70 or 60 at a lower price. I know yesterday he didn't come through. That just in general, they didn't really need him. Maybe today's different on a back-to-back. I don't know. All I know is him, Whiteside, and McCollum are way too cheap. The Portland side of this game is just way too cheap. Even Melo, you could argue, is too cheap. Gary Trent, I'm not really going to chase. He was hitting threes like crazy yesterday. I think he was a big reason that Dame didn't have to do much in the fourth quarter with shooting is because he got hot. The guys were just finding him with the ball. Trevor Ariza is an interesting value play because of how many minutes he's been playing. But Whiteside, Carmelo, CJ, Dame, they're all really cheap. A situation where, again, if you hit that and it works and you get that low owned, it could really make you different, really take you off. And Utah's been terrible. I mean, they did look awful. But at the end of the day, it is Utah. 226.5 total really isn't that bad. Utah is an 8.5 point favorite. I don't know how they continue to be favorites as bad as they've been. But there is some value on the Portland side if you think they can hang in there. Obviously, Vegas seems to think there's a chance for this game to get ugly. And if that's the case, maybe these guys don't return your value. But 7-7 for Whiteside? It seems kind of crazy. I'm just curious how Whiteside's done against Gobert. I'm going to check that out real quick. Whiteside went for 57 last night. Yeah, Whiteside he played 22 minutes. December 26th, got 18. He played 35 minutes against Utah. This was at home, though, in Portland. Played 35 minutes against Utah on February 1st. He went for 51. So, I don't know. This is going to be something. Whiteside, if you don't like him, you'll be fighting not to get a piece of him. I would imagine that right now we're looking at a lot of exposure to him. Dame is the one you have to make a true decision on. Right? Because with Harden in that spot, you really got to, consider your options. I wonder if Paulie's going to go back. Paulie had like 100% Dame yesterday. Obviously, I'm sure that didn't go that well, but he had 100% Dame. That's what he did. He takes stands. When he's right, he's winning all the money. When he's wrong, it's life of a tournament player, right? But curious to hear what his interest is today on Dame now that his price has come down a little bit, and we're expecting low ownership. But Whiteside, I mean, that's tough to ignore. 7-7? 7-7. Last team here, guys. Then we get out of here, and we'll see you guys later. Unless you're subscribed to WiseTake.com, I may pop into Slack a little bit and talk about some things. So we talked about Utah having a day off. Welcome for those of you that came in. If you could, what up, man? Jers, salute. Yeah, envious one. What's going on, bro? That's right, Jers. You got it. Dirty Jersey. Welcome, guys. If you're joining us, appreciate you coming in here. Please hit that like button. It really helps us out. Let's keep things rolling. And if you guys missed what I said at the beginning, last time on the Wise stream, we hit 97 likes, which was awesome. I really appreciate it, man. That shit really helps us out. You guys are the best. I mean, the nation is always strong. Appreciate y'all. All right, on the Utah side, we have a lot of pricing inefficiencies here as well. Donovan Mitchell is now 6'9", it's just too cheap. Now, I will say this. Conley is back playing full minutes, and he's looked really good. I would imagine they're going to want Conley to follow Dame around today. So I think Conley is also interesting at 5'4". He was terrible, right? He was, I don't know, since he got to Utah, he's been bad. But since coming back from this injury, he's looked a little better. Conley, so against Portland last time, he played 30 minutes. He did start, had a 31% usage rate. Against Denver, it was only 23.5, but it was still decent, and he went for 34. His usage hasn't been a problem in Utah. It's been his efficiency. If he can continue to be efficient, then I think he's fine at this price. He just went for 42 with a lower usage rate against Denver. So I think he's fine, and I think they definitely want him for Dame. Rudy Gobert 7-7 is also cheap. We don't mind it against Whiteside, but Gobert is just more competing for rebounds, and that's just not, I want to attack Whiteside with people that I think can shoot, like LMA, for instance. And it is what it is, man. More pricing and efficiencies. I do think Donovan Mitchell's way too cheap at 6'9" and 7'1". I mean, he could do that to you. There's nothing worse than having Donovan Mitchell at a low price. I don't know. Maybe he's chalk today because of his price, but there's nothing worse than having him as chalk at a low out price and just watching him whiff. 28 DraftKings points against Denver in 36 minutes. 36 DraftKings points in 32 minutes against Portland last time out. That was a blowout. 25 against Denver again. So maybe Denver is the issue, because before that, 40 against the Spurs, 51 against Houston. Again, Mike Conley was limited in those games. But he was playing okay earlier with Conley there as well. So I don't think that's going to impact him too much. I think it's just him sucking, 8 for 24, 2 for 9 from 3, things like that. So I don't know. The price is low, but I understand it. He's got a lower floor than people keep in mind. For a player that can go for 40 so easily, it seems at times, we have to remember his floor is really low relative to his price. So that's going to do it for us today. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, talking about this slate. This should be a fun one. There's a lot to discuss, a lot of news still to come out. So hopefully we'll see you guys back for the Y stream at about 5 p.m. We'll redo the game by game. These projections should look a little bit different by then. We'll bring on Paulie. Probably going to bring on someone else also tonight. Make a little 3-man action for the last show of the week. Why not? And do some dirties. Of course, if you're subscribed to WiseTake.com, you can download the projections as we update them throughout the day. With the WiseTake membership, my core plays article will be out later, all that good stuff. In the meantime, we got a lot to take down. A lot to take in. Be ready to react. Waiting for the news. If you just want to chill, that's fine. That's what we're here for. But make sure you come back for the Wise stream. I appreciate y'all. For myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, hit that like button. And as always, good luck.